Thank you. I didn't mean to make you take your coat off if you're cold.
You got to take much to get one.
Well, it is a nice day. It'll cool off again tonight. I didn't keep my phone. It'll get cold again tonight, right?
Yes.
I had someone check it on my air conditioning, which went out about 3 nights ago. Okay.
Ya lo
I hear
están
somebody go.
esperando. Okay, they are coming. Right. They are coming our way.
It is a little difficult to find unless you parked and walk across it. You know we don't want to walk, right? Even when the weather is this nice, when there's no excuse not to walk. We just want to hop out of the car.
We were even at heels though.
That's why you all don't suffer with plantar fasciitis as much. You know, if I put the heels on, that's why I have to put the orthotics in my shoes. That's why I think me. Hey, we'll speak in this order. I'll give my opening. Come on up, come on top. You all can join us. Let's get through so we can get started. Come on up here with me because you know you're gonna speak. Yeah. Hey, how you doing? All right. Again? We're here. Come on the other side of me. Don't you get in? I know you do this all the time. So we'll speak in this order. I'll give opening comments and then we'll have Dr. Adrian Holloway and they'll introduce themselves as well. And then Julia Ordonez. I got that right. And we will have Mitzi Ordonez to interpret for us. Three goals that I want to accomplish today. One is to make the point that we're part of a growing trend in cities and states fighting for housing security and housing justice. All of the protections that you're going to hear about are investments in practical housing stability to try and help save lives. When Harris County invests in housing, we need to know we're providing good places for families to live. These protections provide more stability, more peace of mind, more health and safety in housing units, more legal recourse to Harris County residents. And lastly, these tenant protections help to level the playing field, creating more predictability, security, and opportunity for families. Today we're here at Clemmy Manor. It is behind us. Which was in the headlines a couple of months ago for the abhorrent living conditions for people living inside the walls of those apartments. I appreciate the people from TOP and a number of advocacy groups for bringing this issue to the forefront and the media for doing it. While that project is privately owned and operated, Clemmy Manor is a government subsidized property. Clemmy Manor worked with us to come up with the tenant protections that we're going to lay out today. And other affordable housing owners should do so as well, because this is not an isolated incident. It goes on throughout our county. When we allow government resources to go to housing projects with unlivable, deplorable conditions, government is as much to blame as the owners and operators. No more. It's a new day in Harris County for thousands of families who are counting on affordable housing. At Commissioner's Court on yesterday, we passed the policy that we're laying out today that will ensure any property receiving county funds must abide by tenant protections. Harris County has invested $256 million in affordable renting units, and we're planning to put another $200 million from the American Rescue Plan into building and preserving affordable housing. This new policy will provide tenants living in county financial rentals with more stability than ever before, protections from unfair evictions, retaliation, and standards for housing that is safe, decent, and clean. Additionally, renters will have access to renter shows. Landlords have filed more than 117,000 evictions, $4 million for legal services to help tenants who are facing eviction. Additionally, funds for legal aid for those facing eviction, plus our new tenant protections, will be a 1-2 punch against housing instability. With rising rents, few protections in place for tenants, Harris County is committed to honoring the health and dignity of renters with our new tenant protection policy. What does the policy do and how will it apply? I think I'm going to turn that over to you, to Dr. Holloway, so you can do it even better than I could. Dr. Holloway.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you all for joining us today. Again, my name is Dr. Holloway. Adrienne Holloway. I am the Executive Director of the Community Services Department for Harris County. And at Community Services, we say we invest in people in place. And this particular policy really is evidence of how we do both. We invest in place because we are the entity at the department that utilizes many of our federal dollars and also state dollars to build affordable housing throughout the unincorporated areas of Harris County. And as mentioned by Commissioner, we are utilizing disaster recovery funds to bring at the cost of about $256 million. And that's units that we have developed in unincorporated areas that are funded that will bring in additional who live there. And I think it's so important that we underscore that these dollars come with their levels of protection. We really saw the need to underscore and amplify a bit more of what those protections should mean for residents that live in those housing projects that we invest in. And it's important for them to know, but it's also important for our landlords to know how we want to partner with them appropriately, but we also expect a decent return on that investment, which means to create safe, livable conditions for those who are living in those units. I would also want to just suggest that what we're doing today is not just some one-off on what we are responsible for as a county and as we're responsible for as a department. What we see as part of our strategic priorities for the county is investing in housing and economic residents. So creating a space where people can live and afford to live there, that's very important under housing and economic development. But when you combine public health and environment, you start looking at the conditions of those homes. And we want to make sure that we are aligned with that. So it's part of our overall strategic objectives for the county. And then the Community Services Department is also going to be bringing forth our strategic plan, where we continue to underscore how important it is for the county through the department to invest in affordable housing options for the residents of our county. We are continuously realizing how unaffordable Harris County has become. And if we're bringing dollars to develop homes, we need to make sure that not only they're affordable, but what we're underscoring in this policy to realize that outcome. So as we're creating new units that are affordable, we want to make sure that this policy continues to make that affordability of high priority, but also the conditions just as parallel and important. And the other parallel that I'd like to make is that though it is aligned with our strategic priorities at the county, it's aligned with our strategic priorities with our community services strategic plan, we released a study late last year called My Home is Here. And the My Home is Here study was actually a study that took about 18 months. We commissioned the Kinder Institute of Rice University to complete that study. And the overarching goal of that was to see what is the housing condition of the county. How many units of affordable housing do we need to bring into the county to meet our current need, but also our projected need? And what is the current scenario? And we have about 500,000 people who live in the unincorporated areas of Harris County using costs. And that can be very, very detrimental to someone who's only making $24,000 a year, which is a very significant portion of our housing spectrum that made sense for our county. So out of 11 goals that were developed from both participants in a survey, which were residents, but also an 11-member stakeholder committee, which consisted of county staff, leaders, as well as many housing advocates. We came up with a whole series of different recommendations. But I say this, that study and those recommendations mean nothing if all we're going to do is focus on housing and sticks and bricks. The policy here very much is intertwined in those recommendations. So as we're looking at that study as being a roadmap for how we can improve housing in the county, policies like this really underscore the importance of every step that we take in that investment. So as Commissioner mentioned, this policy was approved yesterday at court. And we're very happy to be able to provide a copy of that policy now that it's approved to any member who would like to see that. But the very overarching areas that we wanted to underscore was the ability for residents to have an outlet to express any concerns with the livability of the units that they have. So there are opportunities for the sharing with us, because those funds that we've invested in these housing units are coming from our department. So there's going to be a vehicle for residents to be able to communicate with the department any concerns that they have with the livability of their units. There is the requirement for landlords who are looking at eviction as an option to make sure that they inform tenants of the myriad rental assistance programs that exist in the county. And while we've had the ability to augment our rental assistance program by virtue of the CARES Act dollars and even ARPA dollars that have come the county's way, we run this program annually. We utilize our annual allocation from HUD to create a rental assistance program to help people on a regular basis be able to meet the demands of their rental situation if their rent income is somewhat depleted at some point. So landlords are required to let their residents know and their tenants know that there's a mechanism there. There is the ability for people to organize if they feel that there needs to be a collective voice to address some concerns, and that there should be no retaliation against residents who are expressing their voice. There is the opportunity for residents who need to be relocated because there's a condition within the housing unit they live in that requires some level of address, so that they don't live through that level of address and they live in a comparable unit until that repair is done. And that's just a few of the highlights that we've included in this policy. There are other different elements that are just as important, but I will leave it with that. What I want to say is I want to thank both Commissioner Ellis for leading the charge on this, for bringing the Community Services Department alongside him in this effort, and his staff who was so instrumental, Janae Ledette, my staff, John Garcia, who have their handprint, their fingerprints all on this policy because they saw how important this was to bring this forth. And I do thank the Commissioners Court for voting this in, and we look forward to answering any questions that you might have, but providing you with that policy. And thank you all for your support.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Julia Orduña. I am the Southeast Texas Regional Director for Texas Housers. The creation of a tenants protection policy is a monumental step in the tenants' rights and housing justice in Harris County. And we are grateful for Commissioner Rodney Ellis, who stepped up to the plate and found the opportunity to make these improvements in the conditions for renters all over the county. Far too long and far too often, Houston tenants are left to live in deplorable conditions. And despite continuously asking for help, the folks at Clemmy Manor, elderly families at project-based developments, and renters at corporate-owned apartments, each and every person, whether they own or rent, deserves the right to live in a safe and decent home, to raise their children free of health hazards like black mold and sewage backups, and adequate cooling on summer days and heating for chilly days like today. The Texas Housers Houston Eviction Solidarity Network has heard time and time again in eviction court tenants asking landlords for repairs and getting served with court summons instead of receiving court orders. Tenants withholding rent for repairs only to be evicted anyway. We cannot stand by and let our working class and families be ignored and neglected because they do not own their home and they rent. Government actions like this tenant protection policy helps tenants ask for solutions and demand equal treatment. It creates accountability for landlords and developers who promise to upkeep these developments and provide adequate housing with local funding. We hope this policy establishes practices of enforcing housing conditions that are safe, sanitary, and dignified. We look forward to a future where tenants in this county benefit from these critical protections. Thank you.
Mitzi, I know you know what you want to say, so you don't have to interpret every word that we said because you're so good at it. Plus, she knew what we were going to say. Introduce yourself.
Okay. Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Mitzi. Soy organizadora comunitaria de la campaña de vivienda con TOP, Texas Organizing Project. Y hoy estamos aquí porque nos emociona mucho compartir y apoyar esta póliza para los inquilinos. Como organizadora, a diario recibimos llamadas de muchos inquilinos frustrados y que se sienten solos porque los dueños violan sus derechos o son ignorados. Entonces, el estar hoy aquí significa un paso muy grande para los inquilinos y los residentes del condado de Harris County. Estamos muy agradecidos con Rodney Ellis y el departamento, todo el departamento de Harris County por este gran paso. Creemos que esto va a ayudar a que los inquilinos puedan vivir en un lugar saludable y podamos hacer responsables a los dueños. Esta es una victoria totalmente para los inquilinos y es un paso que tenemos que seguir trabajando. Ahora después sigue hacer lo posible, hacer que estos pasos se implementen y hacer que nuestros inquilinos sepan cuáles son las protecciones que se han ganado hoy. Así que creo que este es un gran paso que tenemos que seguir trabajando en conjunto para ganar todavía más protecciones para los inquilinos. Y totalmente las familias y los inquilinos merecen vivir en un lugar digno, merecen vivir tranquilos. Mucha gente no puede tener tranquilidad al saber que viven en un departamento con mold o que sus quejas han sido ignoradas por el landlord. Y a veces la respuesta que les dan es, si no te gusta, puedes irte. Entonces creo que estas protecciones serán totalmente de una ayuda para que nuestros inquilinos del condado de Harris puedan tener tranquilidad y puedan vivir en un lugar seguro. Así que sigamos trabajando para fortalecer estas protecciones y que todos los inquilinos del condado de Harris puedan estar en una vivienda saludable. Gracias.
I should have mentioned, I want you to say it, that I want to give a shout out. I want to thank Judge Hidalgo for her leadership and Commissioner Garcia, because without their support, we would not have had the 3 votes to adopt this.
Esto es totalmente un trabajo en conjunto. También queremos agradecer a la jueza Lina Hidalgo y al comisionado Adrián García por unirse a estos esfuerzos.
Okay, and thank you, and gracias. And I want to thank my staff for working on this. They've been working on this for some time, but we were working in a vacuum, so to speak. We were talking to the department, and then when the Clemmy Matter controversy came up, we thought the timing was right, so we accelerated the issue as much as we could. We appreciate Dr. Holloway and her department because we could hold up the funding to really put a spotlight on the issue. Then it took us maybe about another month to finally complete the policy that you have before you today that we adopted on yesterday. Dallas City, Janae, who did my work on this, step on, you good.
So we followed a lot of best practices following Travis County, San Antonio City, and including a lot of the protections that those jurisdictions have in our policy today. So a lot of places across the country already have these protections, and this is an opportunity to afford the same protections here for tenants in Harris County.
I think it's fair to say, you and Dr. Holloway, we went as far as we could go under Texas law. There's some places around the country where states don't restrict the ability of local units of government the way they do in Texas. There's some states that have adopted policies on their own, so cities and counties would not have to do it. But we went as far as we could, best practices, looking around the country. There were things we wanted to do but could not do, but at least we're very much in line with what's happening in Austin, Dallas, and San Antonio. Questions?
Yes, so the enactment, it was passed yesterday. How would you all distribute it to all the tenants? You know, they're obviously going to see this press conference today, but, you know, letting the management, the owners, the tenants, make sure that everybody knows this.
We are having this press conference because we expect you to help get the word out to the tenants. It will go out in my newsletter Commissioner Garcia and hopefully the other commissioners will put it out in their newsletter, whether they are for it or not. But we rely on the media to a great extent to get the word out. It only applies to those projects where there is some county financing. So anybody trying to get county financing, whoever applies for the financing will know. To the extent we can, we'll let the tenants know. But I think there's some provisions where they have a responsibility to let the tenants know. You want to comment on that, Dr. Holloway?
Yes. Thank you, Commissioner. This policy is in effect moving forward. So any developer that wants to utilize Harris County financing through entitlement dollars or federal, state, or local dollars will be required to comply with the tenant protections policy. And part of that includes informing any potential tenants. So as they're submitting applications for residency and consideration, the tenant protection policy is an addendum to that lease. So they would know what protections are afforded to them. So it's not widespread, and it's also for Harris County unincorporated, because that's where we invest our dollars currently.
Someone from TOP is here to speak. Congresswoman, you in a rush? You want to go next?
Robert
TOP, come on up.
Yes.
And introduce yourself.
Yes, I will.
Texas Organizing Project. And look, we appreciate the work of the Texas Organizing Project.
Well, thank you kindly. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you. All to take this moment to recognize some such needed progress being made in terms of tenants' rights for Harris County residents. My name is Robert Holly. I'm a member of the TOP Housing. Actually, I'm a leader with the Texas Organizing Project here in Houston. As a member of this community and a renter, I strongly believe these protections are a step in the right direction. In other words, otherwise a volatile housing market. Houston is a growing metropolis of diverse people with different backgrounds and income levels, and this essential policy is an excellent initial step in reducing harm to the current housing crisis. Let's face it, low income to medium income working class renters across Harris County are being squeezed out of their neighborhoods. That's why we look forward to continuing to work with Harris County officials, community organizers, and members of the community. We move forward in strengthening renters' protections and make sure all people in all communities have access to affordable and adequate housing. What we need more of is fairness. That's why this policy is rooted. It's not as big of an ask at all. It's common sense. We don't want corporate landlords taking advantage of fellow community members. We want respect and the ability to keep a roof over our heads. Let's use this smart policy as a stepping stone to even greater protections for tenants across Harris County who are being dealt with in a right way. Let's continue to make a difference with humane housing policy like this one. Again, thank you all again for having me. I appreciate the time, and it's important we build off this with progress. Let's take it to the top.
So thank you very much. I appreciate the work of TOP. Look, it's important to point out that we would not be in a position to have a policy that impacts housing projects where the county is putting money in were it not for federal money. We do get some state money. Most of the state money is federal money, but even if it is a state tax credit, it would apply if it's financing that the county touches in some way. I hope we'll get to the point, Dr. Holloway, at some point where we use some of our local bond money to help people who are trapped oftentimes in substandard housing. And I'm just so glad that our senior congressperson was kind enough to come by. We're in the heart of her district. Always good to be with her. With that, I'd like to bring up Congresswoman Sheila Jackson-Lee.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I am most glad that I am in the district today, and I want to thank Dr. Holloway, and really I want to thank tenants, TOP. You are top in my life and in my heart. From the breadth and depth of the 18th Congressional District, it is an eclectic district. It represents the corporate downtown Houston, high rises that are coming into the downtown center that are of premium rent, superior rent, people who are living the best quality of life. They are professionals, they're independently wealthy. At the same time, from the breadth and depth of my district, I can walk from northeast to southeast and northwest to the southwest part of my district, and the dilapidation and deterioration of housing for hardworking Houstonians and those in the 18th Congressional District are atrocious. We have been to some of these sites in far northeast. We're now in a 5th Ward, a historic community, and if you travel through the lower 3rd Ward of my district, you'll find major owners of property who have allowed the rent to be increased and the quality of housing to decrease. You have seen seniors sitting in dilapidated facilities, homes, their homes, by the way, where they are troubled by rain and cold. I can assure you there are seniors in housing that were very cold last night. And so this statement of a combination of private dollars, and I say that local dollars, and federal dollars, is an important statement, so much so that I am going to be looking for modifications in our federal distribution of housing funds that we require these strict requirements. And why do I say that? The importance of being able to have repairs without being intimidated to be evicted. The importance of being able to apply for housing, particularly individuals who are single language, Hispanic, Latinos, who come to a property, hardworking, got their receipts, employed, and are discriminated against, or those single black men, or families with children, or elderly persons, no matter what their racial background. You can find discrimination. And then something that I hold dear, that I'm facing every day. In fact, in my phone right now is a call from a person who was evicted, who we're trying to work with. That is due process. And even though I've spoken to, appropriately so, not over a particular case, the justice of the peace who have to respond to landlord evictions, and their heart goes out, but they have no protection. They have to evict the person, even if we are helping to plead for more time. It's a crisis in this particular community. Right now, Section 8 has 40,000 people on the list in Houston, Harris County area. That's federal dollars helping people get subsidies. But when they do that, they're still in properties that are under par. They're still subject to eviction, and they're using federal dollars. So this excellent leadership of the county, Commissioner Ellis, thank you for laying the initial framework for something that does not happen in Houston. What we as public servants do in our casework is do our best to call landlords to say, give them another chance, give them a couple of days. It was rampant during the pandemic, rampant, and we federal funds that came, but the calls about eviction were rampant. So let me say again, I am gratified that we will be able to, in this program, seek repairs without the threat of eviction. Don't think that is not a serious threat. You make a nuisance of yourself, you're bound to be out. Number two, when you apply, you're not discriminated against. That is a rare protection because there's a laissez-faire, there's a freedom that I don't want you and you're out. I'm going to look to the next person because housing is at a premium. And then something near and dear to my heart is a question of fairness, that you can tell your story, explain to someone that there is a basis for you not to be evicted or that you should have due process on such. I just want to close this statement. There's a lot of video showing one in particular that went all over the nation of a male parent with a baby and about 3 or 4 children around him and his spouse. as they were being evicted, sort of on the edge of COVID. And it went national, right? It went viral. And of course, our name was associated with it. Houston, Harris County, Texas. That we could evict someone with that great need, that had children, or that was a senior person, or a person with disabilities, the disabled. This will help all of these persons get a lifeline. And Commissioner, I want to see the program implemented on a national level. Bare minimum should be that we give people the dignity of their homes. Their homes. And I continuously tell people, whether you're in public housing or Section 8, or you happen to have a great Fifth Ward house, or living in a greater elevation from the east end, of respect for the home that you pay for. And it may be an apartment, and it may be another type of home. You need the dignity of what you pay for. So I look forward to working with you on this and working with TOP. Dr. Holloway, thank you, and ensuring that we take this national, because it is not, and it is needed. And I thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Texas Houses, I always give you another shout out because they've been so good on so many issues. That I should mention that I appreciate Mayor Turner and his leadership. Once we held up the funding, the federal money for Clemmy Matter, the city decided to insert that language in their provisions as well. The county should have had a policy a long time ago, but we have one now. And if we see the need to build on it and improve it as far as the law would let us go, we'll do that. The challenges of the state level are what they are, but we'll go as far as the law would let us go. I think I answered your question, didn't I? You'll get the word out. Yes, sir.
How are these tenant protections going to be enforced?
Dr. Holloway? The hammer. By the hammer.
Well, we're going to have mechanisms in place so that tenants they're residing in property sent to us, but there will be a communication vehicle established between tenants of those properties and our office. So if there's anything that we need to act on, we will be informed directly.
And will the landlords or developers be held accountable in any way? Because I remember with the Caroline Loft situation, I believe it was an MOU as opposed to like some.
It's an agreement, right? Because these are developments that we would be investing in. There is a loan agreement, so there will be provisions in those loan agreements that say if the tenant protections policy is not being adhered to and we have evidence, then we can have some financial recourse associated with that. So if there's a payback or if there's litigation that needs to occur, the agreement itself becomes that contract, that breach of contract, if you will.
So with Clemmy Matter, we'd already put the money in. So what I was doing was holding up money going in another project. But the enforcement here is a clawback. That's the shortest way I can give you an answer. A clawback. That's a hell of a tool. Any others?
Can I just add?
Yeah.
I want to be more specific about what I think the federal government can do. One, I'm intending to work with a very, very effective, engaging, and concerned Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, who has as one of her main concerns is the state of housing for persons needing affordable housing, persons who are most vulnerable, the homeless, and one approach can be an administrative approach to the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. The other, for the federal involvement, is introducing legislation that requires, in federal dollars, Section 8 properties and others. Obviously, we pay for the public housing here in Houston, that would be guidelines within that in terms of the quality of repair. But the idea of the private housing, mostly through the federal government, comes through Section 8, and then the partnership with the county, the very fact that they're implementing this process, I want this to be a model for county governments and cities to use around the nation, and that we can do working with the administration so that we can actively be engaged in the changes that are being made so aptly and so wonderfully here in Harris County.
Anything else? Yes, sir.
I have one more question. You mentioned at the beginning a separate fund for legal aid for tenants who are being evicted. How will people access that legal aid? And yeah.
It's about $4 million. Dr. Holloway, you wanna?
We currently have a program in the department now called our Legal Services Department, of which there's service providers providing legal services for housing and evictions in particular. We're going to augment and expand that program with the additional more ARPA funds. So we advertise it through their department. Again, another vehicle or opportunity for the media to assist, to let people know that we help those who are finding themselves in the eviction process and provide access to legal counsel during that process and guide them hopefully through that. But at the same time, we're bringing in our rent resources to help maybe convince the landlord to drop those proceedings and wait for the funding to be able to pay
You
back
remember the
rent.
total dollar amount we've invested? I think we gave it to legal aid. $1 million.
$1 million currently for our current program, and then we'll augment it with an additional $4 million that will last us for the next 3 years.
And that's unprecedented. In the past, the county had not put anything in. And I think the city put some in as well. Seems like we gave it to, am I right? Did the city put any in? So
Not-
we
not
put in
recently.
$5 million. Okay. Anything else? Thank you all. Staff.
So nice to meet everybody.
Good job.
So nice to meet you, Senora.